Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order at 1 o'clock. Good afternoon, council and staff. Nice to see you here today. I see the whatever wicked stuff has been falling out there has stopped. These proceedings of this meeting will be recorded and made available on the internet. But could we ask the clerk to conduct the roll, please?
Mayor Clarkson, are you present?
I am.
Deputy Mayor Windover?
Present.
Councillor Armstrong?
Present.
Councillor Franzen?
Yes.
Councillor Lambshead?
Present.
For staff, we have Donna Taggart, CIO Treasurer.
Present.
Dylan Kosh, Director of Recreation and Facilities.
Present.
Evan Grieger, Director of Public Works.
Present.
Barb Waldron, Director of Building and Planning, CBO.
Present.
Adele Arbor, Planner.
Present.
Anne Ruth, Deputy Clerk.
Present.
And Sarah Dillamarter, Junior Planner.
Present.
Thank you. Now we're going to do the land acknowledgement and moment of reflection. We respectfully acknowledge the Trent Lakes and Peterborough County are located on the Treaty 20 Michi-Saugee territory and in the traditional territory of the Michi-Saugee and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nation, which include Alderville, Beausoleil, Curve Lake, Georgina Island, Hiawatha, Rama, and Skoogile Island First Nations. Trent Lakes respectfully acknowledges that the Williams Treaty First Nations are the stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. We will now take a moment to reflect on these principles and our duties and responsibility as a member of council. Thank you. Do any council members have anyone in the community that they would like to remember today? Hearing none, I'm going to remind council members of the obligation to declare any pecuniary interest that they may have. Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were going. That's okay. No.
Did you have something
No,
to add?
pardon?
Did you have something to add?
I'm sorry.
Did you have something to add?
No, I didn't. No.
Okay. Okay, seeing none, I need a motion to approve the agenda.
That's I just go through that.
Good, you got to jump on me. Deputy Mayor Windover, Councillor Franzen, all in favor. Motion is carried. We have adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting for October the 19th, statutory public meeting October the 19th, special council member of the 25th. Motion for all of these members meetings. Councillor Lambshead, Councillor Armstrong, all in favor. Motion is carried. Minutes and reports from committees and boards, liaison reports for council boards and committees. Are there any liaison reports from EDAC, PRCAC, PSB, or library board? Hearing none. Now, a piece of information here, it looks like the Goodbye Room is going to open in January. Carol, you've heard that?
That was what the board was looking to do.
Okay.
Assuming that was continue to see reduction in the numbers.
Okay. That's good news because there's a lot of hardship in the area right now, and access to clothing and things that people have got to give that's a good place people are used to going. Okay, statutory public meeting pursuant to the Planning Act. Now we need a motion to suspend the regular meeting. Councillor Lambshead. Councillor Armstrong. All in favor? Motion has carried. Sarah, can you introduce the first file, the 2121 for Hill, please?
Through you, Madam Mayor. This is a public meeting under Section 34 of the Planning Act to consider an amendment to the municipality zoning bylaw B 2014-070. A notice of public meeting for today's application containing the prescribed information was circulated to all landowners within a 120-meter radius of the subject lands at least 20 days prior to this meeting. The notice was also mailed to all prescribed agencies, public bodies, and persons in accordance with the regulations. Anyone wanting to be notified of any decision from today's public meeting must send in a written request to myself or the clerk, and the notice of passing will be mailed to them, setting out the method and manner in which appeals may be made to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Please note that if a person does not send a written comment prior to the passing of the bylaw or make an oral submission at a public meeting, that person may not be entitled to appeal the decision. So this is a public meeting for file number 21-21 to consider a zoning bylaw amendment submitted by the owner, Jason Hill, for a shoreline lot located on 308 Northern Avenue on Little Bald Lake. The subject lands have a shoreline frontage of approximately 27 meters or 88.6 feet and a lot area of approximately 2,955 square meters or 31,809 square feet. The property is currently zoned shoreline residential. The applicant wishes to construct a new dwelling with an attached garage and upper floor area, having a ground floor area of 287.8 square meters or 3,098 square feet. The new dwelling would also include a deck with a total floor area of approximately 80 square meters or 861 square feet. In order to construct the proposed dwelling, the applicant would require the following relief from the zoning bylaw. 1, an increase to the ground floor area of the existing 62.71 square meter, 675 square foot dwelling of more than 50% to permit the construction of a 186.04 square meter or 2002.52 square foot replacement dwelling. The total gross floor area of the two-story dwelling is proposed to be 410.21 square meters or 4,415.46 square feet. 2, a reduction to the 30 meter or 98.4 foot minimum water yard setback to 17.38 meters or 57.02 feet. While the existing non-compliant water yard setback of the existing dwelling is 7.9 meters or 25.92 feet. 3, an increase to the maximum extension of the front deck from 3.05 meters or 10 feet to 3.66 meters or 12 feet. There's a planning report on the agenda from the municipality's planning consultant, Chris Jones. Chris's report identifies that the proposed new dwelling would be located in the water yard, but would be substantially further back than the existing dwelling. He notes that the application is generally consistent with the provincial policy statement and growth plan. The municipality has received commentary from the Kawartha Pine Ridge District School Board and a neighboring landowner in support of the proposed amendment. As of 12:15 p.m. today, Carol Newsom commented that a property survey and new stakes should be put into the ground prior to construction. Property owner Jason Hill is available to answer any questions. Further, if any members of the public did not register with the clerk indicating their intent to make an oral submission but would like to do so at this time, please use the raise a hand feature so that we are able to prompt you in order for you to make an oral submission. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any members of the public, Sarah, that are available at this time to speak? If not, do we have questions or comments from council members?
I don't believe anybody's here to speak today.
Okay, council members, anybody comment? Okay, let's move on to the next one, please. The amendment 2122 for Baldassari.
This is a public meeting for file number 21-22 to consider a zoning bylaw amendment submitted by agent Tom DeBoer of TD Consulting Incorporated on behalf of the owners John and Elizabeth Baldassare for a shoreline lot located on 2023 Crystal Lake Road on Crystal Lake. The subject lands have a shoreline frontage of approximately 48 meters or 157.5 feet in a lot area of approximately 0.34 hectares or 0.85 acres. The property is currently zoned shoreline residential. The applicant wishes to construct a new dwelling with a ground floor area of 122.6 square meters or 1,320 square feet, a 44.6% increase in ground floor area from the existing 54.7 square meter or 589 square foot dwelling. In order to construct the proposed dwelling, the applicant is proposing a reduction to the 30 meter or 98.4 feet minimum water yard setback to 15.1 meters or 49.52 feet in order to permit a replacement dwelling. The replacement dwelling is proposed to be further from the existing non-compliant water yard setback to the existing cottage of 6.9 meters or 22.64 feet. There is a planning report on the agenda from the municipality's planning consultant, Chris Jones. Chris's report identifies that the proposed new dwelling would be located in the water yard, but would be substantially further than the existing dwelling. He notes that the application is generally consistent with the provincial policy statement and growth plan. The municipality has received commentary from the 4th of Pine Ridge District School Board in support of the proposed amendment. No additional comments have been received. Further, if any members of the public did not register with the clerk indicating their intent to make an oral submission but would like to do so at this time, please use the raise a hand feature so we are able to prompt you in order for you to make an oral submission. Thank you.
Okay, do I see any members of the public?
Yes.
I don't believe so.
Yeah, we have Vanessa Archer.
Pardon?
Vanessa Archer.
Vanessa Archer, are you there? And would you like to comment, please?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Clarkson and councilors. I'm speaking on behalf of TD Consulting. We're the applicant on the file for the owners, John and Elizabeth. And I'm just here to say thank you for reviewing this today. And we are in support of Chris's recommendation to accept and approve the zoning bylaw amendment. If there's any questions, please feel free.
Okay, council, does anyone have a question? Hearing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, can we have a motion to reconvene the regular meeting? Councillor Franzen, Deputy Mayor Windover, all in favor. Motion has carried. Do we have business arising from the statutory public meeting? Sarah, would you like to speak to the file 2021, please?
Thank you through you, Madam Mayor. There was a public meeting held for file number 21-21. At this time, staff are recommending that council receive the report from the planning consultant, Chris Jones, and support the zoning bylaw amendment being requested. The zoning bylaw amendment is on today's agenda under bylaws for approval.
Thank you. Can we have a motion, please? Councillor Franzen?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to receive the report and approve the attached zoning bylaw amendment.
Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Armstrong? All in favor? Motion has carried. Okay, Sarah, 2122, please, for Baldessari.
Thank you through you, Madam Mayor. There was a public meeting held for file number 21-22. At this time, staff are recommending that council receive the report from the planning consultant, Chris Jones, and support the zoning bylaw amendment being requested. The zoning bylaw amendment is on today's agenda under zoning bylaws for approval.
Okay, thank you very much. Can we have a motion, please? Councillor Lamshead.
I can make a motion to receive the report and approve the attached zoning bylaw amendment. The reasoning for approving this for me is that we're moving further away from the water yard on both of these occasions. So it's improving your water yard setback.
Well said. Could we have a seconder to that, please? Councillor Armstrong. All in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, presentations. We don't have any. Delegations. We don't have any. Business arising from a previous meeting. Dylan Kosh, Director of Recreation and Facilities, if you'd like to speak to the Buckhorn Sports Pad feasibility study.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm not going to say too much on this. Just give a brief overview of the history. We, Council passed a notice of motion to seek out a consultant to conduct a feasibility study for the rink to determine feasible options moving forward to mitigate the loss of regular ice time due to natural causes. So the consultant was hired. They performed their work over the summer months and presented their findings at the October 19th council meeting, where council resolved to defer to a time where the full council was available to make further moves. So I will leave the floor to you folks to discuss.
Okay, do we have conversation from council? Councilor Friends.
Yes, I'm prepared to make a motion at this time. A motion to defer this matter till we have reports from Parks, Recreation and Culture Advisory Committee, the Buckhorn Community Center, and appropriate municipal staff.
Do we have a seconder for that? And is there a conversation? Councilor Armstrong.
Yes, thank you. I would second that with a friendly amendment. I would add, how would you phrase it? Reporting from PRCAC.
Yeah.
I would add to that insofar as the report is in alignment with their master plan.
Mhm.
And BCC, again, report back to us with the implications for BCC and their position on moving forward for any of those. Just to try and start off the record, just to try and contain what the response is. And then I would second. I'm not sure about staff, since they already, and the consultant kind of scoped what the staff requirements were. Do you feel strongly we need to include staff in this at this point? They've kind of given their input to the consultant.
Any other comments? Yes.
I have a comment. I was hoping that during this process, we could start some sort of working group to gather a bit more information from all the relevant parties. Like, I would like comments from EDAC to see, they're all important comments, some comments from some of our ratepayers groups and cottages associations. I think those comments are important at this time. And yes, absolutely, BCC has to be number one on this conversation, because we're going to be possibly doing something or not on that piece of property. So I think PRAC should be involved, EDAC, many of our cottage associations. It's about gathering information. So I think the more information we have, the better off we are making a decision.
Councilor Armstrong.
Thank you. If you may I comment on why wouldn't we then, Councilor Lamb said, just move to a public consultation process, and/or, because I think we want more public input. We want stakeholders, and the key stakeholders are PRCAC and BCC. But I think we're looking for input from the public, which would be a full public consultation process. And I would further float the idea, which I have privately floated, of having a referendum on the question when we go to our municipal election in October 2022. I think this is a very large financial investment on the part of our taxpayers. Not initially the capital of $1 million to $6 to $9 million, and covering an ongoing deficit annually of anywhere from $140,000 to $500,000 a year. So I believe the taxpayers should have a vote on that.
Well, I think I've got comments on this, but I think we have a motion on the floor. It has been seconded. So I think we should call for a recorded vote on this motion and then move forward to see if there's any traction there. And if not, then move forward for a second motion. So could we have a recorded vote?
Yes, Mayor Clarkson, are you in favor?
No.
Counselor Franzen,
Yes.
Counselor Lambshead,
Not as it's presented, no.
Deputy Mayor Windover,
No.
Counselor Armstrong.
Yes.
Okay, that motion has failed. Now, let's see if we can do a second motion. Councillor Lambshead.
I still think it's important to start some sort of working group, so I think I could make some sort of motion like that. I think we need a couple members of council on it. I think we need some members of the public and very limited input from staff because we've already got input from staff. So the odd occasion, I think, and I think that working group would interview all the relevant parties so we get a really good broad amount of information from our ratepayers. So we could strike a working group to gather relevant information to make a recommendation to council as a way to move forward with making a decision for what to do in regards to the sports pad in Buckhorn.
Councillor or Deputy Mayor Windover.
I was just go second the motion.
Okay, it's duly seconded. Conversation.
Thank you. And who would you recommend, Councillor Lambshead, be on the working group? I think it's very important we get some impartial,
I
objective people.
personally I would volunteer to be part of that group, and council can decide who the other person is or not have me in it. Doesn't matter. It's more of a decision of council. Sorry, further for that motion is, we want to talk with BCC to see what their ideas are as to way to move forward. The Parks and Recreation Culture Advisory Committee, I would like to have input from EDAC and several other ratepayers associations.
And I would like to sit on that committee, and I also would like to speak to this motion. I think if you look at how long we were tossing around the idea of what to do about the roads depots, I think this same type of thing was set up at that time. And I don't think there's anybody who had anything to do with that who thought it was anything but unbiased. So I think it's a good starting point. The buck stops here. I think when we've had the amount of consultation we've had with the public, with the last person who just did the study for us, ultimately it comes down to a decision of council. So if this is done in a broad enough fashion, when the recommendations come back, those recommendations then will be considered by council as a whole. But every single council member and people, stakeholders in the community will have input in this. It worked, like if you, as I say, this committee for the park or for the roads depot did more in 4 or 5 months than was done in 4 or 5 years. So I can't see why this one can't operate the same. Councillor Franzen?
I can't see how it could possibly work. BCC believes that they are partners with the municipality in this facility, and there are only 2 partners. And they would like to make a presentation to council or comment on the report. And the Parks and Rec would also like to comment on the report before we bring these other groups in. Because these negotiations are going to fall apart before they even start if we bring in other organizations.
Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Lambshead?
Well, I think that is number 1 and 2 of the conversation if we do start a working group.
But we have to deal with that before we start the working group. What position do you work with if it's not going to be acceptable to the Buckhorn Community Center?
Through you, I think that's exactly why you have the working group, is to find that position. The working group's not going to make any decisions. They're only going to make a recommendation to council, and council makes the decisions.
But we need a decision from Buckhorn Community Center before we can deal with this working group, because they don't know what they're working with. If they're working with this location or another location. And I guarantee if we go this route, we'll be looking at another location.
I would, in my view, part of what we asked the consultant to do should have taken that into consideration. And since they didn't take it into consideration, I think the working group, whoever does this, obviously that's the first thing that's got to take place, but somebody has to do it. They're not going to do it by themselves. There has to be a recommendation come from somebody in order to put it all together. So I don't see that that has any, I think the working group will actually give them an opportunity to interact in some sort of a meaningful fashion. I can't see that that's anything but a positive step.
It won't work, Janet, or Mayor
Well,
Clarkson.
That's easy for you to say. I don't,
I've sat the last year as the council rep on Buckhorn Community Center, and they reiterate time after time, there are only two groups that are negotiating about this rink. That is council and it is Buckhorn Community Center. And they want that settled before any other group is brought into the equation. It's been brought up meeting after meeting after meeting.
yes, Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that's a really good point, Councillor Franson. I guess we have a motion on the floor, although I think we might also consider a motion wherein we simply deal with the BCC as a partner first to understand what the parameters are in terms of moving forward. And after that, then look at a working group, since we will know what the boundaries of their activities and consultations would be.
One further comment, do we want any comments from our Parks and Recreation and Culture Committee? Because that would have to be in a motion that we would request that they comment on this report.
That was in my motion that they would be number 2 to be commenting on. I am quite willing to remove and wait until we have a conversation with BCC first to start the group. That is not a problem. I think that is, this is new to me that they weren't going to be willing to negotiate any other things. I mean, this is information we should have had earlier, most likely, but that we certainly would have modified the motion. So I'm quite willing to modify the motion that we communicate with BCC first, then we interview the other people once we know and have a direction that can be supported by both the partners in this.
Okay, then my question there is, who do we direct to have that conversation with the BCC? Because it's got to be somebody that has got the ability to gather what they have to say and then come back to the working group. And I don't understand why the working group wouldn't be the ones to do that step. I think we're adding a step.
I believe this has to be done between council and the BCC and not a working group to be palatable to the BCC.
And how do you determine, how would you go about that? How would you go about it?
Well, we'll first of all get a report from BCC and see where they stand, and then council can counter that report and say, would you accept this and this and this? It's a negotiation.
But not to get too deep into the woods. And we can do that pretty darn fast. But to start with, we do not know what the requirements of that building is for septic. So until we know what that space is, how do we go to the BCC and say, we need half the ball field? We need the whole ball field? How do we go to the BCC with anything definite until some of the groundwork has been done in terms of what that facility would require? Do we go and say, if we need the whole thing, are you agreeable to that? Like how would you broach it?
I would approach it that we would get an initial report from BCC and see where we progress from there.
But Peter, we've already got that.
No, you don't. They haven't prepared it yet. They said they would probably be able to have it prepared before our first meeting in December. That was a statement made at the last meeting.
Meeting of who?
by the chair of the BCC.
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. I think maybe I can help with this. What we have not done to date is to ask BCC to respond to the recommendations that are in the report of feasibility study that we just received. And within that report, they put forward 3 options, each of which defines what would be required in terms of septic and moving the ballpark, et cetera. So I think what we're asking BCC to do is to respond to the recommendation, those 3 recommendations, and bring that to council. So I think the date, that's the whole reason we did the report, is so we could get the data and the hard data to use to have this conversation with BCC.
Yeah, I agree.
Councillor Armstrong, we have no hard data. The first 3 recommendations do not contain change rooms.
Sorry, but $1 million to $9 million scoped as capital costs and an operating deficit scoped at between $100,000 and $500,000 a year, best case is hard data. And I think that's what we were all looking for. So we could put that into our overall strategy and planning and determine what our priorities are as a council and where we believe taxpayer money should be invested.
Okay, we're getting away from what we're looking for here. Are we going to try to negotiate with the BCC before we've determined what the facility must look like? Not what it might look like, but what it must look like. There are certain requirements, septic, parking, whatever, that need to be considered before we can go to the BCC and say, are you willing to negotiate for this much land? If you want to go to the BCC and give them that scenario and say, if this is the case, or can we move forward? I'm okay with that too. But I do not believe that when we've come this far, that we keep holding it up and holding it up, because that's exactly what's taken place for the last 6 months. One time everybody's in favor of this, the next time they're not. So we've got some recommendations in here. We've got something to start with. I think Councillor Lambshead laid out a map forward. It makes perfect sense to make that the first contact. But do we let them hold us up indefinitely? I don't know. Yes.
I have a first comment. We've never all agreed to it. We agreed that it wasn't functioning the way it had functioned in the past. We never said that we were going to approve refrigeration of that pad. There was never a vote that we were going to enhance that facility. All I'm asking for is that the BCC have an opportunity and our Parks and Rec have an opportunity to comment on this report. Whatever's decided later on, any kind of committee, and if they want to bring something back, I think we almost have to hire an engineer or get an ironclad quote. Having a committee isn't going to provide you with that information.
Peter, if I can comment, I don't think you were here when the committee was struck for the roads depots. Because that committee was struck just exactly like we're talking about this one. This committee would have no power to make decisions. All it has is power to gather information. When the information is gathered, then it comes back to council, just like it did with the other one. Council at that point has the opportunity to say yes or no or change or whatever. So it's not like there's 2 or 3 people making decisions here. It's 2 or 3 people gathering the information that's needed. Because once the information is gathered that is needed, and council were agreeable to that, the next stage is for us to get what do you call it? Project manager, who then goes at it from one stage to the next until it is priced right down to the last bolt. That goes on a shelf, shovel ready, and we go looking for grants. Now that project manager is going to cost some money, but we had $103,000 in that account that was donated and raised over the boards and everything else over the last few years. So I think there was $23,000 taken out of that in order to do the study we've just had. So there's about $70,000 left. That $70,000 will more than cover the project manager. So at the end of the day, that person is the one who will bring the whole package together. And then we sit. I verified that through North Kawartha because that's exactly what they did. So when they had the whole thing ready to go, it went on the shelf. They had the office, everybody else looking for grants. And the minute the grant came down, they were ready to go. Because when you put in for that grant, and there's all these little spots that you have to tick off, if there's one of those spots that isn't ticked, your grant doesn't get looked at. So I've probably oversimplified it. There's no doubt that I probably have. But don't get hung up on the idea that you think the working group are making decisions. They're not. The working group would gather enough information that the council would then be in a position to be able to say, we like what we hear, we don't like what we hear, we want to change this, we want to change that. But Parks and Rec have had two kicks at the cat to do all of their surveys. We've got them, they're all put aside. The community center has commented time and time again, one time one way, one time the other. So we know that there's a lot of moving parts in this. But if we don't take the bull by the horns and put a couple of moving parts, it's not like the council's going to be taken out of this. The council will be part of these consultations as well. But at the end of the day, that recommendation should have representation from all of the stakeholders, and then council makes up its mind.
Just a further comment. If we would divide that motion in two parts, and the first part of it being getting a report from the Buckhorn Community Center, or a response from the Buckhorn Community Center, and a response from the Parks and Rec. Would that be acceptable in that motion?
I'm quite willing to
Yeah.
change the motion to do that.
And I have one further comment. How could $200,000 be raised towards the rink when we haven't even approved it?
Because it's not raised, it's in pledges.
Yeah, but who went out and got the pledges?
Hard to say. I did.
I can guess,
I did.
but it wasn't even brought to council at that time.
That's
Janet.
because there's no paperwork involved. This is just going to local people in the community and saying, if we go forward with this, would you be willing to put some money toward it?
I think it's still appropriate to bring it to council's attention.
Well, that's all right. But there is absolutely no paperwork. There's no obligation. At the end of the day, if the project goes forward, people can choose to put their money where their mouth is or not. But if the project goes forward, these people in the community are people who believe in it. We know, we get the emails of all kinds of people who don't believe in it, but there's a big difference between somebody who goes on the internet and says, I don't want it, to people who will put their money on the line. So there's no paper trail for any of these people.
That's the last of my comments anyway.
Okay. And if that motion goes forward, let's give the BCC a timetable. Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of things. First of all, just a reminder, as Councillor Branson said, that there has been no decision to move forward on this. And I don't think until such time as there is, a project manager would be hired, because that's a little further down the road. But secondly, and I will say this, my concern with the working group is frankly around the membership. I think it's fine for our mayor to support it. I know it's part of her vision and it aligns with her belief that we need to invest in the youth, et cetera, and all of that. I think that's fine. I don't think it would be appropriate for the mayor to sit on the working group, because she has gone out and done some early fundraising for a new rink. And I think if nothing else, it would be a perceived conflict of interest, if not a financial conflict of interest. So my problem with the working group is more about who would sit on it, and would it in fact be truly impartial and objective. And secondly, I guess my concern about the working group is, will they come up with any new information other than BCC and PRCAC that we wouldn't get from going through a full public consultation process, rather than filtering it through the stakeholders?
Councillor Lamson.
I think we can probably simplify this quickly, is let's have a motion to get comments from BCC and PRCAC about the report about the sports pad. Simple as that. Once the comments come back, then we can decide if we're going to start a working group or not, and what the composition of that working group will be. So we really need the comments back to council. So I think that is important, just to do those first two steps, which would have been part of that working group's procedure. But if we do it first, I think that's appropriate. So let's just I'm going to revise my motion completely to have council. Yes, sorry. We've
Could you
already got a
perhaps
second.
withdraw your motion to make it really clean for me?
I did.
Withdraw?
Yeah, I withdraw my
Okay,
motion,
thank
and
you.
I'm going to present it differently so that the Council of Trent Lakes asked BCC and the PRCAC for comments in regards to the sports pad feasibility study.
Yeah,
That's the very same as my motion.
Very simple, yes.
yeah,
Yep.
I
Like
second
we-
that motion.
yeah, we're going to have to get comments from the BCC, because if we don't, I mean, the whole thing will just blow up in the air, just say,
Yep.
well, you know, we don't want it at all. I mean, that's not right.
There was always going to be
You've
comments.
got to
that was-
end up getting
That was
Yeah.
never going to
from
be,
everybody, not,
Yeah.
you know, no sense going ahead and spend a whole bunch of money and then by find CC because they, well, we don't want it there. That doesn't make sense. I mean, that's like,
but that was never going to be the case anyway. That was always part of the working group's mandate. So don't let that into the minutes that they were going to be cut out, because they're not. And if anybody
Can I-
wants to
can I ask-
challenge the work that I've done, by all means, challenge it. But right now, I feel that I would want to be on this unless somebody decides that they want to. And we're not there yet. We haven't formed the committee. But once the committee is formed, I don't feel that there's any reason. I mean, you know, people looked at another one I was on and they could look to something that somebody had some financial input, which I found hard to believe. But there is absolutely nobody that can put any kind of a paper trail toward me and this facility. Do I believe in it with all my heart? I certainly do. Do some other people around the table believe in it with the same certainty? Not. So I could turn around and say the same thing as well. I know where your bias is. You know where my bias is. And I was taken to an integrity officer probably 20 years ago, not 20 years ago, 12 years ago. And I saw one of the top lawyers in Ontario. And the recommendation at that time was that as long as you're doing something to advance the welfare of your community, that you have absolutely no conflict. And they said that an average person would not be in municipal politics if they did not have a stake in their community. So I'm going to take that professional's opinion, and I'm not going to back off this unless I am forced into it. It's just too important. Now I'm going to call for the vote for the motion as it is.
I would like to have it as a recorded vote.
Yes,
What
but
was
we
that
also
again?
don't have it. We haven't got a date established on this yet.
I was going to recommend the first meeting in December.
That would be acceptable for me to get comments from BCC and PRCAC
And what's the time frame for that?
beginning
Can
of
we put
September.
it in?
around the beginning.
What is the first December meeting?
The first December meeting
7th.
would be December 7th. So I'll be posting the agenda November 30th.
Now, are we going to ask for
Might be quick.
written comments or a delegation, or is that up to them?
I think it would be up to
both would
them.
be good, huh?
I believe it would be written.
As long as we have comments, it doesn't really matter how we receive them, as long as we have comments.
But we're not going to turn it down if they want to do a presentation.
Oh, no.
No,
Okay. So that's what we're voting on? Okay. Do you still want a recorded vote?
yes, I do.
All in favor?
Let me call the vote.
Councillor Branson, are you in favor?
Yes,
Councillor Lambshead?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Windover?
Yeah.
Counselor Armstrong,
Yes.
Mayor Clarkson.
Yes. Okay, that has passed unanimously. Now, if we have no more discussions on this, can we deal with the evening meeting considerations?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Clarkson. At the August 10th meeting, through notice of motion, staff were directed to report back on evening meeting considerations. For the past 15 years, council meetings have been held during the day with the exception of summer meetings in 2019 and 2020, which resulted in meetings ending between 8:16 and 9:33 at night. Currently, only 3 of the 8 lower tier municipalities hold evening meetings. While information on age and employment status are not required when filing nomination papers, staff feel that there have been a range of nominees and a change in meeting time will not guarantee the age or employment status of nominees. Any candidates for mayor or deputy mayor will need to be available for daytime meetings for county council as well. When contemplating a change in meeting time outside of employees' normal working hours, consideration must be given to staff availability. Regular council meetings, on average, run 2 hours and 45 minutes. Allowing staff to bank time for this will impact service levels, as staff would be out of the office more regularly, which would impact turnaround time for responses to ratepayers and reports back to council. Staff and consultants may have previous commitments outside of normal working hours that would make it difficult to accommodate evening meetings. The municipality may need to take extra precautions to ensure that staff are compliant with the provisions of the Employment Standard Act as well. With evening meetings, driving conditions must also be considered. Sunset can occur as early as 5 p.m. in the winter and as late as 9 p.m. in the summer, meaning staff and council will be driving more at night. During the winter months, there may be poor driving conditions at the conclusion of evening meetings due to snow plowing operations. Consideration was also given to committees. The original advertisement for committee members advertised a 5 p.m. start time, and both committees have switched to daytime meetings. Given all of the considerations outlined in the report, staff do not recommend evening meetings due to the impact on levels of service, staff resources, and safety.
Okay, I want to make a motion to receive that report and then discussion on it.
I'll make a motion to receive.
Okay, seconder, Councillor Armstrong. Okay, comments.
I'm not in favor of evening meetings for all of the reasons discussed, plus a few personal reasons. I found in the past when I did a lot of evening meetings, I had a lot of sleepless nights because you work through the meeting and then you have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to work. It's very stressful on councillors. We had in this past week, we had a meeting that we had with our solicitors. That couldn't possibly be an evening meeting. We have meetings with our planners, and that couldn't possibly be an evening meeting.
Yes, Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I think kind of building on that, I think there are 4 stakeholder groups that we need to consider when we look at this. It's not just council or staff. So council is certainly the first stakeholder group, and based on the benchmarking that's been done, and only 2 of our other municipalities have evening meetings, there's no evidence to suggest that having evening meetings necessarily attracts people of different groups, whether they're working or not retirement, et cetera. So I don't think the evidence supports that. The second group is staff, and I think we've seen from the report the significant level of service, financial and personal costs of shifting to evening meetings that the staff would have to bear. The third stakeholder group are the presenters, and that's exactly right. We have lawyers, we have consultants, we have insurance people, we have auditors, all of whom are professionals, and they work in the daytime. And so that group, I think, would see a disservice if we moved our meetings to the evening. And the final group is the public, and they probably should be the first group that we consider. I think since we have moved to Zoom meetings, our attendance is up greater than it ever was when we had in-person meetings. People don't have to drive all the way here and back to participate, so their investment in listening to the meetings is less. They can put it on in the background and wait until something of importance comes up. So I think the public appears to be better served by having our day meetings and continuing with that. And the numbers, I think, support that. So if I look at those 4 groups, I just don't see a compelling reason to move our meetings to the evening.
Councillor Lamson.
One little comment, I just checked and there's 32 people involved in this meeting right now. So some of the comments that Councillor Armstrong said are definitely valid.
Well, I've sat on council a lot of years, and we always had evening meetings for an awful pile of meetings, you know, and we had more people attend our meetings when they're evening meetings than we've ever seen here. I'll tell you that right now. That's like in 1992, 93, way more people. It's going to be almost full at that time. Now, because right now, if you're an afternoon meeting, you have to either be someone that's not working. That's all, who can come to a meeting on Tuesday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. A working person sure can't. Not that I've ever seen anyway. We all work. Yeah, I know that. We got it, because we're elected. I'm talking about people coming to listen to the meeting. I'm not talking about us. I work 12 or 14 hours a day, every day. So it's not that, it's how many attendance we have at the meetings.
Councillor Francis.
Not that I'm proposing it, but I remember being on council quite a few years ago, and we had all of our council meetings a Saturday morning.
Wow. You may go.
Everybody could attend that.
You may take 5 minutes off now.
And you know what was interesting? I think the most people we ever had there, except when we were talking about moving to Haliburton County, was 3 people.
You sound like my mom who used to walk across the Buckland Bridge for 25 cents an hour. I guess I'm not a great person for plebiscites, but I think this would be a really interesting one to put on an election ballot, just to see what the situation would be, to get feeling from the general public. My major reason for bringing this forward in the first place was to make it available for people who are working, because I think we're missing a lot of younger people who are in business, who just cannot afford to take that kind of time. As far as the argument about all the professional people that have to be there, I sat on affordable housing for 6 years. We had the lawyers. Those meetings started at 6:30 at night. We had the lawyers, we had everybody that we needed. That was not a detriment. And I think now that we have Zoom, that makes that type of thing just that much easier. So I don't think that argument, I think the argument for Zoom can be used either way. So I still think that there's benefits to that. Yes, obviously it's going to tie staff up for a certain amount of time, but staff won't be tied up any more than council's tied up. And if we can make this available to a larger group of people and people who do work in the community, who have something to bring forward for young families and whatever, I think we're doing our job. I can see by the looks of what I'm seeing that this is not a popular thing, but I still think that it has merit. How we would gather a better. And maybe this meeting today will give us some ideas. Councillor Lambshead, you have probably more at stake in this than anybody around this table.
For me, it's a commitment. You've been elected by ratepayers of this municipality. I will make as many meetings as I possibly can. It does affect me sometimes. I can't make a meeting, but I make every meeting I possibly can. It's difficult sometimes. I'm absolutely not going to deny that.
No, I'm not saying that you have missed meetings because of it. I'm just saying you're in a position to see the commitment that somebody who is working for a living has to make. And if you're not in the position of being the boss, then can you go to your boss and say, I've got a council meeting this afternoon? Probably not. But as I say, is this something to go on a plebiscite? Maybe it is. So shall we vote on this or shall we have more discussion?
I think the motion now is just to receive it, and then we can see if there's a further motion.
And any future council can, I mean, we only have less than a year left. They can make whatever decisions they want. And committees, I believe, as of now, they can make decisions what time of day that they're going to have the meetings.
That's why this is a good time to do it. Because people going forward, people who are looking at running for the next election would know what their time commitment was. So to me, this is the time, if we were ever going to change it, this would be the time to change it. But I don't think that the will is there to do it. But the conversation has been opened and we'll see where it goes. So right now we have a motion on the floor to receive it. Is there a seconder to that motion?
I'll second it, but we haven't got a second.
You made the motion, I believe, didn't you?
Yes, I have that
Oh, okay.
Councillor Armstrong second
Yes.
to receive.
Okay.
Okay, so all in favor, and I would like to see a recorded vote.
On the receiving?
Overall.
Okay.
No, actually, no, the receiving, we're all going to receive it. We don't need a recorded vote for this. All in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, council
Madam
meeting.
Mayor, can I make a further, because we have to vote on calendar for next year, which is next on the agenda. So can I make a motion that in the meantime, we continue status quo with council meetings at 1 o'clock?
I think that is a foregone conclusion, is it not?
If it is, then I don't need. then I would
I don't think you
withdraw.
need a motion because we haven't made a motion to change it, so.
Okay.
Okay, so council meeting calendar. Everybody okay with their calendar?
Yeah.
I don't know what we would do with it. Okay, so a motion to receive this and support it. Councillor Lambshead, Councillor Franzen, all in favor? Conferences for Roma and OGRA. Did anybody take a look at what they wanted to do for those? You don't know, or you're just thinking about it?
No, I would be happy to step up for the Roma conference, which is in January, and obviously will be a Zoom.
No, it's not, it's in person.
Roma?
I checked Roma when I prepared this report, which might be a little bit outdated, and they didn't say a meeting location. They didn't confirm whether it was electronic or in person. OGRA is in Toronto, did say they're in Toronto, and AMO said Ottawa, but I could not find a location for Roma.
Okay, my error. I thought I saw something, but I could very easily be.
Good roads are. Excuse me,
Yes,
the good roads when it's going to be held in person, right?
yes.
We just got that information in the county today.
Yes,
Sorry, Councillor Armstrong, you are correct. It now says join us virtually Sunday, January 23rd to Tuesday, January 25th, 2022.
Okay.
So it will be virtual. Roma.
So I would volunteer if nobody else wants to attend the conference, but I certainly defer if somebody else would like to do that.
I want to do OGRA, good roads. I want to go out on that one. I was hoping we'd get one more kick at the can before.
And Jesse, what time is AMO of the year? The summertime?
Correct. It's August 14th to 17th, and they have a location right now in Ottawa.
I'd be willing to go to that one.
Myself as well, if that's an opportunity.
What was that, Jesse, you said?
AMO is held in August in Ottawa.
AIM? Well, I thought good roads.
Good
Is in
Roads
August.
is in February, and
Good
it's,
roads?
yeah, February 27th to March 2nd, and they have a location currently of Toronto.
Okay.
And we can send 2 people to that?
Yep.
Okay,
Are you interested in OGRA then?
good. Well, I guess, yeah.
Yes, he
I
is.
would good roads, yeah.
Okay. There's also the OEMC conference. It got deferred in 2021. I think they just held it in October. But if no one's interested in that, that's fine. We don't have to send anyone. And was there any thoughts to which ministries and what topics for delegations? If any, we don't have to delegate.
Can we think about that?
Delegations are now open. I would have to double check when they close, but I don't have it offhand.
Like, since Ron and I are both at the county, I'd like to see us, see what the county offer too, so that we're covering as many of these as we can. So give us a couple of weeks on this one.
Sorry, the deadline for booking delegations for Roma is November 15th, and our next regular council meeting is November 16th.
So we could email you ahead of time, because all we have to do is let you know who they are, not what they are yet.
I would need to know who they are and what they are to register.
So you need to have the, okay. All right, so we can work with staff to get that straight, to get that out.
It's just been, in the past, there's been wanting a consensus from council before proceeding with a delegation to make sure that all council is in support of who and what we are delegating to.
Well, I'm going to ask council what they would delegate to. I would like to see us, pound away on this last and several liability. And, cost of insurance, they're obviously tied together. Anybody else? Anybody else want to see something? Carol, what would you take?
Honestly, I'd have to think about it there.
Well, I think that's what we have to do, is we have to think about this a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay,
We could always book time with natural resources and forestry. We always have issues with that agency. I can't think of a particular issue right now, but I'm sure if I thought about it, there would be something that we could.
well, I think that's what we need to do. This is, to do this on the spur of the moment, I think we do need to. Because we've got one more meeting before this, do we not?
No, the next meeting's November 16th, which is after the deadline to submit to Roma. And I do believe I need both the ministry and the delegation topic in order to register.
Well, if we don't have ones ready for Roma, we still have OGRA and we still have AMO. And AMO's the umbrella for Roma anyway. So I don't think it's a big deal if we miss Roma, but have our act together for.
Well, we know that we're going to do the one. So why don't we just take a look at what those ministries are? I'll send out a note to Donna, and then she can just copy council, and they can say yes or no to whatever it is, and we'll put something together. And it's a shame to miss the opportunity. I know people say, well, we talk to them in this, same thing over and over again. Well, maybe that's what they need to hear. So let's put our heads together, and if any of you come up with something that we can use.
So if I'm clear, are we or are we not requesting a delegation at Roma?
Yes. We want to do the last and several liability. And we can probably always do the pits and quarries to try to get it's not a per diem, what is it they call that, per ton?
The tonnage.
Increased. We can always do that one. And we are making some headway there, because over the years it has gone up. I think the argument that we've used where it said that one truck is the equivalent of like 2,500 cars sometimes makes an impression on them. The other one that I wouldn't mind speaking to is tourism.
What specifically?
Whether or not they're going to give us some the funding for next summer, because they talk about it, but we want to make sure that it actually gets lands in Peterborough County. Again, that's something that if we were going to do that, I would contact the PKED and also our own economic development and put something together. And that's probably right now the one that we should do because they're the ones that are probably in the most jeopardy. Get Lynn to help us put that one together. So would those two work for everybody?
I've said many times before, the squeaky wheel.
So it was the ministry responsible for joint and several liability.
Yeah, and
And-
tourism.
And tourism?
Yeah.
If I could have a motion to that effect of sending Councillor Armstrong to Roma, Mayor Clarkson and Deputy Mayor Windover to Ogra, Councillor Franzen and Councillor Lambshead to AMO, and directing staff to request delegations regarding joint and several liability and funding for tourism for just Roma or Roma and Ogra?
Well, we're doing Ogra. Do the Roma want to do that one too?
I think it's important to get our voice heard. So.
Okay, Roma and Ogra.
Where you going, Peter?
To the email.
Aim.
I would make that motion if you want me to Jesse.
Thank you.
And I will second that motion.
All in favor? Sorry, I'm half asleep here. And that motion has carried. Just hold on here. I'm losing my way here. Pardon?
Public Works, Evan is next.
Public Works? There he is. Hello, Evan. Where are you?
Hello, good afternoon, Mayor Clarkson, members of council. Today in front of you is a report with a recommendation just to receive for information. This report is for in regards to the surface treatment capital program, just to provide some information that the majority of the work is going to be deferred till next year. This is as a result of the wet season that the contractor experienced, and then the specifications that are required to apply this type of treatment. Obviously, I'm here to answer any questions or discussion if you'd like.
Okay, thank you, Evan. Evan, how are you finding the municipality? You're starting to find your way around a bit?
It's beautiful. Little piece of God's country up here. It is just wonderful. So very much enjoying my time up here.
Wait till he
I
gets,
don't feel any sense of regret.
wait till he gets 3 or 4 inches of ice, eh? Anyway, anyone have questions for Evan? From what I've heard, he's responding very quickly for people and people are happy with him, and this is a good thing. Compliments or questions? Seeing none, can I have a motion to receive this report?
Motion to receive.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Franzen.
I don't have a
Councillor
copy.
Lambshead, all in favor?
Mine didn't show anything.
Motion is carried.
18, 118.
Recreation and facilities, we don't have a report right now. Fire and emergency. Sarah, you're going to speak to application 7821 for addition to lot.
Through you, Madam Mayor. On today's agenda, there's a municipal appraisal form for consent file B-78-21 submitted by John Mesek, agent, on behalf of owner Vilma Ricci. The subject land is located on 9 Fire Route 274. The application conforms to official plan policies as the proposed severance will cure an encroachment by an abutting lands of 5 Fire Route 274. Neither the severed nor retained parcels conform to the existing comprehensive zoning bylaw, the 2014-070. A zoning bylaw amendment must be made for the severed parcel to reflect the same zone category as the benefiting lands, and the retained parcel must accurately represent the existing fire road access, as 9 Fire Route 274 does not contain direct access to County Road 507. Additionally, the zoning bylaw amendment for the retained lands must address the new non-compliance created by the severance, as the existing non-compliant lot frontage will be decreased from approximately 25 meters or 82 feet to approximately 19 meters or 62.3 feet. Staff have reviewed the application and recommend that council supports the consent application subject to the conditions of a merger agreement and a zoning bylaw amendment application.
Okay, can we have a motion? Okay, Councillor Lambshead,
A motion to support with the merger agreement and the zoning application restrictions.
thank you. Seconder? Councillor Franzen, all in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, you're on again, Sarah, for creation of a right-of-way.
Through you, Madam Mayor. On today's agenda, there is a municipal appraisal form for consent file B-113-21 submitted by agent Jim Baird of LLF Lawyers, LLP, on behalf of the owners Trent and Tracy Steink. The subject land is located on 89 Sugarbush Crescent. The application conforms to official plan policies as the intent is to create a shared right-of-way with the transferees of 91 Sugarbush Crescent. Staff have reviewed the application and recommend that council supports the consent application.
Thank you. So can we have a motion to support that? Councillor Lambshead,
Motion to support.
thank you. Councillor Armstrong, all in favor? Motion is carried. Donna, budget timetable. You
Yes.
poor thing.
So thank you, and through you. Before you is a report on the 2022 budget timetable for your information. The budget will be passed by February again. That is the plan. And the portal for public feedback is open, and we look for all the public feedback we can get. So just for your information, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Okay, do we have questions for Donna? Okay, then can we have a motion to receive her budget timetable? Councillor Franzen,
A motion to receive.
and a seconded. Councillor Armstrong, all in favor? Thank you. It's carried. Administration, none. Jesse, you're going to speak to the Committee of Adjustment appointments.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Every year, the Planning Act prescribes that members of council that are on the Committee of Adjustment be appointed annually. Currently, Councillor Lambshead and Councillor Franzen are on the Committee of Adjustment, and I'm just looking for direction on who to appoint for the 2022 year.
I certainly would volunteer to stay on it.
I would as well.
Now, what happens at the end of the day when the election comes up if somebody isn't still here?
Through you, after the election, we plan to have the appointments for all committees done at one of the first meetings of the new council.
So this is really an interim type thing, is it?
It would be until November.
I just think it's an interesting time to be doing this.
I believe we do it every year.
Yes, we do.
It's a
Okay.
once-a-year thing that the councillors have to be appointed for that committee.
All right, that solves that problem. All in favor? Yes.
Oh, I was just going to, sorry, if that's a motion.
I think it has to be a motion, right?
Yeah, I was going to make a motion to appoint, Councillor Lambshead and Councillor Franzen to continue on Committee of Adjustment for this year.
Okay, a seconder to that.
I think it should be wrong.
I'll second that.
Okay.
All in favor? Motion has carried. Okay, we've got a whole lot of correspondence. Can we have a motion to accept this, or you can pull anything out that you want?
A motion to receive all the correspondence for information.
Thank you, Councillor Franzen. Councillor Lambshead? All in favor? Nice to see the amount of support we got for OHIP. The county wouldn't get involved in this because of the union negotiations. So I'm going to point this out that we didn't stop because of that. However, I don't think they've got it solved yet. Another correspondence for action for the Ketchicola Forest Stewardship Committee. And this is to request a letter of support for the Ketchicola Conservation to Minister Bikini. Yes.
Motion to support.
Okay. Motion by Councillor Franson, seconded by Councillor Lambshead. And who do you want to draft a letter for this, or what do you want to do there? Yes.
Through you, the Ketchicola Forest Stewardship Committee on the agenda included a draft letter of what they would like council to support.
Okay. All right. John Wright?
We'll just need to call for the vote on that one.
All in favor? Motion is carried. John Wright's bylaw for the off-road vehicles. Yes.
A motion to receive.
Okay. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Armstrong?
I would second that with just a comment that I'm no expert on ORVs, but the reason we put in restrictions on when ORVs could be operated was because of a recommendation that was given to us by Peterborough Public Health. And it wasn't a suggestion, it was a recommendation. So I think that was certainly what supported my voting to include that daytime restriction on the bylaw.
Anyone else care to comment? I think before we're done, we're going to see more restrictions than this. Okay, all in favor? The motion is carried. Bylaws. Jesse, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, thank you. There are 3 bylaws on today's agenda which didn't have a corresponding council report or were part of the public meeting. And they all relate to the Ing Gilbert file, which is OPA 53 and zoning bylaw amendment 2028. So there is an official, the public meeting was held September 7th. So there's an official plan amendment, a zoning bylaw amendment, and a site plan development agreement.
Okay, we don't need motions for this, but we do for this one. B21-114 official plan amendment 53 for Gilbert. Motion, please. Councillor Armstrong, Councillor Lambshead, all in favor? Motion is carried. Now we need a second for the zoning bylaw for Gilbert. Motion, please. Councillor Lambshead, Councillor Armstrong, all in favor? Site plan development agreement for Gilbert. Gilbert's been busy today. Councillor Armstrong, Councillor Lambshead, all in favor? Motion is carried. 2021-119 zoning bylaw for Hill. Motion. Councillor Lambshead to approve. Councillor Franzen, all in favor? Carried. Baldessari zoning bylaw. Motion. Councillor Lambshead to approve. Councillor Lambshead, all in favor? Councillor, that's approved. Notices of motion, do we have any? Don't hear any. Information items, liaison reports for external boards and committees.
I just have a question. There seems to be a little bit of controversy about moving the food bank in Buckhorn. Do you have any information on that, Mayor?
I have no information on that whatsoever. The food bank in Buckhorn, as far as I know, is operating the way it always has. I dropped food off the other day at Community Care because we've been collecting it through the Lions. And I was told the Community Care doesn't really accept it, that Peter Raymond picks it up and takes it either to Lakefield or Peterborough. And there are a few people who are concerned that the food may be leaving Buckhorn. So there's a little bit of a concern as to whether or not if the goodbye room were to open up again and the OPP room is not being utilized, that maybe a small drop-in food bank there for people who just want to leave food could be maintained in there. So I have a call through to Galaziano to see what he thinks of that. Because one of the biggest problems with food banks is anonymity. And once the food bank, once the Goodbye Room opens, which looks like it's going to be January, people could go in there very anonymously because there is a connecting door between there and the OPP. Because there is no longer a community policing. So whether or not something comes of that, I don't know. Pam Dickey is looking into it. I'm not. I've got enough on my plate, but I have been exploring the use of that building. But I'll tell you, I was quite surprised that the food being picked up was not staying in the area. I thought community care was actually distributing it. So I don't know.
So this is initiative from the Lions Club.
Yes. Yeah. But not to exclude, like it's not like they're trying to say to this group or that group, you shouldn't be doing this or doing that. It's more a matter if the food is being collected in the area, how do we keep it in the area? And, maybe, who knows? But I know one of the things that we're doing for the Santa Claus parade is a food and toy drive. So it would be nice to know, like ideally it would go to the school, but the school, then again, you can't have a food situation in the school and have it anonymous. And you cannot have people in the area who are separated out for having something that they need. The food bank that's offered by Outreach, they tend to be families who are identified, and I think each month they get a basket. And that fills that very, very nicely. But COVID I don't think COVID has added to the need for food in this area. I think what it's done is it's brought it to the forefront. So it's not a seniors problem. It's a problem across the board. So the idea is, how do we make it more available, not to take it away from the ones who are already making it available, but how do we add to that?
Yeah.
So I have enough on my plate to worry about it. I've given it to somebody else. But we'll keep you updated as to how it travels. But it hasn't anything to do with taking away from anybody else.
Okay.
It's trying to add something else to it. Anybody else? So Carol, you're on that board for the library.
Yes.
So then you'll keep us attuned as to what's happening with the
Yeah, with the
Goodbye
Goodbye
Room.
Room, absolutely. I mean, as you know, the board decided not to open it this year. They're never open exactly over the Christmas holidays anyway, so they gear up and close and so forth. So they're already starting to plan for it.
Good. Yeah, because it's a shame to be taking our stuff to dropping it off in the diabetic center somewhere where who knows where it goes, when it should be in this area.
I just have one other comment. It's a completely different subject. But since Goodbye Room is opening in January, are our council chambers going to be opening in around that same date?
This is not the person to ask. That's why I'm pointing down the way.
So through you, we'll have to see where things are at that time. There are some restrictions that have been lifted that would allow some more people to attend, but they would still have to have masks on and be distanced, and there would be a limit. And there's always been a concern of having to turn people away when it's a venue like this. So we would just have to investigate that further.
Just a follow-up through the mayor. How long would it take to open up the council chambers? You'd have to set up some sort of protocol when the conditions warrant it. Like, would you need a month lead time? Would you need 6 weeks lead time to develop a policy?
So through you, we would rely on the information provided by Peterborough Public Health. There are some exemptions for municipalities under that, but they would definitely require, masks and physical distancing. And there are some that are considering it that would request also proof of vaccination coming in, which would require staff resources as well. So I would, want to have conversations with our clerk regarding a time frame she would be looking at if we were to move to that. but we can come back to you with further information. I do see things starting to open up for sure, but it would be the direction of council whether you want that dynamic. Because you could have a situation where if council want to have their masks removed, for instance, you could have a roped off area. Council could continue to sit as they are and would be allowed to take masks off, but the public would still have to keep them on as of now. So
Because it's very difficult to speak with the mask on.
it is.
You'd be taking it on and off all the time.
Right, and it's always been through you, a situation where we would be concerned if we reached our max for numbers, having to turn people away because that would be a concern, so.
Okay.
Donna, I understand from a couple of people that Trent Lakes also has a food bank at Christmas time, Christmas hamper. And I was told that you need help to pack these. So who is actually the lead on that?
So through you, for many years, there have been a dedicated group of people that put together hampers and toys and that type of thing. And actually Ann Beck is usually one that leads that group. They have had a meeting already. People do donate through the municipality and we keep those funds, and then the group purchase food and toy and gift card items. But I wasn't aware, I haven't heard that they were looking for resources. We have the application upstairs, I believe. And we typically are just ones that collect them for them and then just pass them along to them. But I haven't heard they were looking for, they have had a meeting.
Okay, because my understanding was that they're looking for people to come in here at a certain time to help pack all of these things.
So through you, they do have a deadline every year on the application, and the group of volunteers meet and they pack food hampers and toy hampers for. So when people apply, they indicate on that application how many children, for instance, and their ages and that type of thing. And anything that is given to those individuals is specific to what their household looks like, or often there's, food involved with turkey dinner, that type of thing. So I haven't
So
heard.
how do we get the word out there that I wouldn't say service, but that program is available?
So through you, we have people come every year and donate. This has been going on for a very long time. So I think there's a lot of people that are already aware of that. I don't know, I would imagine it's pushed through our social media. We can check on that as well. But I don't know of any other way that it's put out there. But I know that people look for it every year already. I believe a report came to council last year, potentially, just letting you know somebody that had donated some funds, a young child or something for that group. But
I don't know where I've been. Okay, because that's one of the things that we're doing is we've got a trailer that's going to collect food and toys. And we've been sort of like we were going to go through community care, but if community care doesn't keep them in the area, we're looking for somewhere else for them to go. So we'll find this out. All right. Any other information items that anybody wants to bring forward? I don't see any. Now we're going into a closed meeting, so we get a motion to close. So council is going into a closed meeting to discuss personnel matters about identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. Anyone that is listening or viewing the electronic meeting may remain on the line for when council rises from closed session. We need a motion to go into closed. Councillor Franzen, Councillor Armstrong, all in favor. Motion is carried. We are unmuted at 2:50. Welcome back, everyone, and I need a motion to rise from closed. Deputy Mayor Windover, Councillor Lambshead, all in favor. Motion has carried. Business arising from the closed meeting, we want to adopt the minutes from the regular council meeting of October the 5th and the special of October the 25th. Need a motion for these two, please. Councillor Lambshead, Councillor Armstrong, I see your hand. All in favor? That motion has carried. Motion to approve confirming bylaw. Councillor Franzen, Deputy Mayor Windover, I'm sure you're there. All in favor? Motion has carried. Motion to adjourn. Look at us. Councillor Franzen, Councillor Lambshead, he's got both his hands up. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.